Welcome to our JavaScript web course. In this video, we will learn about variables. A variable is a container that represents or holds a value. It is given a name that represents what it will contain. So the name of the variable should be representative of what it will be containing or holding or its value. If you remember from basic math or algebra, this should look familiar. Here we have x equals 2. So x represents or holds the value of 2. Now we have x plus 3. So what does x plus 3 equal? Well, if x equals 2 and we add 3 to it, then we get 5. So variables are names that hold values, and we can use those variables in programming. So what are some of the benefits of using a variable? Well, you may not know the value yet, so you create a variable to hold a future value. It makes code easy to maintain because should the value change, you only need to change it in one place. And it also makes it easier to clarify our code. So here we see an expression, total price equals subtotal plus tax. If these were numbers, you might not understand what those numbers represent. But because they are variables, you have a better understanding of what those values would represent. A variable is declared with the var keyword. We will learn later in this class of a few other ways of also declaring a variable. I would like to point out that variable names are case sensitive. JavaScript is a case sensitive language, so please be aware of that. So the process of creating a variable, we use the var keyword, we give the variable a name, and we assign a value to that variable. The value can be assigned to the variable when it is initially declared or later on. So here I have several ways of declaring a variable. First, you can just declare the variable name. The second way, you can declare the variable name and you can set a value for it. This is called initializing. It means that the variable has been initialized to an initial value. We can create multiple variables using the var keyword once if those variable names are comma separated. Notice that at the end of every statement we have a semicolon. We also can create multiple variables and assign them values using one var keyword if they are comma separated. These last two procedures are called shortcuts. I do not recommend using them. I think it is easier to see everything in your code if you declare one variable at a time. So I recommend declaring each variable separately as you see here. It's much easier to see at a glance what you're working with. In the event that you do not have a value for a variable, meaning it will be determined from a calculation or possibly from a value from a form, it is a good idea to initialize it to an empty string, as shown here. If a variable is not initialized, it technically holds the value of undefined, and it could cause problems with your code at some point. So it's recommended to always initialize your variables to an empty string or a 0 if it's a number, if the value is not yet known. When we declare a variable and assign a value, we are using the assignment operator. The equal sign is considered the assignment operator. We are not really saying that one thing is equal to another. What we are saying is the value on the right is assigned to the variable on the left. so we are assigning a value. What is on the right is assigned to what is on the left. We have some rules for naming variables. They must begin with a letter, underscore, or $sign. They cannot begin with a number or any character except the underscore or $sign. I do not recommend beginning a variable name with a $sign. The reason for that being the PHP language requires all variables begin with a $sign. Because you may have PHP and JavaScript in the same file, to avoid confusion, I recommend not beginning a variable name with a $sign. A variable name cannot be a JavaScript keyword or a reserved word, and we will be learning what they are as we go through this course. You want to make sure you give the variable a meaningful name. For example, var num1, var num2. Num1 and num2 hold no meaning whatsoever. However, var cost, var discount, those names have a meaning. They give some kind of identity to the value that they will be holding. Please use meaningful variable names. Again, variable names are case sensitive. JavaScript is a case-sensitive language. Var num1 lowercase n is not the same as var num1 uppercase n. There are common variable structures that developers use when creating variable names. It appears that the author of this book uses the uppercase letter for every word, which is fine, that's his choice. However, in the industry, what is called the Camel Case syntax is very common and prevalent. By Camel Case, I mean the first word is lowercase, the second word, the first letter is uppercase, the third word, the first letter is uppercase, etc. You also see many developers using the underscore to connect the different words. Either way, it makes it easier to see the variable name if it contains multiple words. You cannot have spaces in a variable name. Regardless of which style you choose, pick a style and be consistent. It is very difficult to find errors in your code when you use all different kinds of structures for your variable names and your code layouts. When you assign a value to a variable, that value will have a data type. In JavaScript, there are 5 data types. We will be predominantly working with number data types or numeric and string data types or text. Some examples of a number or numeric data type: a single number, a negative number, a decimal point, a 0, or an exponential notation. String data is always enclosed in either single or double quotations. It can contain text, numbers, or keyboard symbols. Boolean data is either true or false, so the value of the variable would either be true or false. Those words are not enclosed in quotations. We will be using Boolean values later in this class. JavaScript has a null data type. Null means that there is no value. It does not mean that it's empty. It does not mean that it's an empty string. An example of a null value would be a radio or checkbox that was not checked. Therefore, it does not have a value. Another data type is undefined. If a variable has been declared and a value has not been defined, and you use that variable, it will return the value of undefined. In JavaScript, you do not need to declare the data type when you're declaring the variable. In other programming languages, this is required. So if you have a background in other programming languages, be aware that you do not need to declare the data type when you declare the variable. In JavaScript, we have what are called special characters. And one of those characters is the backslash character. That is used to allow us to display certain characters in a string that would otherwise cause an error in JavaScript. You might hear the expression to escape a character. So if we were to use a backslash or a double quote or a single quote in JavaScript, depending on the outer quotes, it might cause an error. So in order to use that, we can escape that character or put the backslash in front of it, as you see here. In JavaScript, we have this concept of concatenation. To concatenate means to join or combine. Essentially, when we are adding variables and strings together, we need to concatenate them. As you have learned earlier, string data is always enclosed in quotations. Variables are not enclosed in quotations. They are interpreted by the browser, and the value is displayed in place of the variable. Therefore, we have to join the string and the variable together. We do that using the plus sign. In the example you see here, we have var my car equals Tesla. Tesla is the value of the variable. In my document.write statement, I have a string expression, my car is a, and I want to combine that with the value of the variable. I need to use the plus sign. I also need to leave an empty space inside the quotation, because if I don't, the letter A will merge with the value of the variable. So you always need to keep that in mind when you're combining strings and variables with respect to displaying it on the web page. You want to make sure that it looks like a complete sentence and your spacing is correct. Here we have another example of concatenation, and now we are using two variables. We have my car equals Tesla, and we have the year equals 2022. Notice that I chose not to enclose 2022 in quotes. I am using it purely as a number. So if I wanted to display the sentence, my car is a 2022 Tesla, I could do that in JavaScript by concatenating the string expression, my car is a, with the variable, the year. Now, we also have to concatenate a blank space between these two variables so that they don't display right next to each other. And how we do that is with an empty string. So you see my double quotes and there's a blank space in between them. So this is an example of using concatenation. Concatenation can be very tricky sometimes. In JavaScript, we also have what is called a template literal. This is an easier way to concatenate. A template literal uses the backtick character. It does not use the single or double quotes. The backtick character is located on the upper left keyboard underneath the escape key. So here we have the same example. We have my car equals Tesla, the year equals 2022, and we want to output the expression, my car is a 2022 Tesla. So in our document.write statement, we place the backtick characters at the beginning and the end of the entire expression. We enclose the variables in curly braces, and we place the $sign at the beginning of the curly brace. Therefore, we can place the string data and the variables side by side inside the backticks, and the browser will interpret the values of the variables. You do not have to worry about the spacing because it will preserve the white space, and you don't have to worry about all of the plus signs. So using a template literal is an easier way to work with string expressions and variables.